So it's finally time to talk about the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, a franchise I've been wanting to talk about on this channel since the very start. And I asked my buddy Mike from the Z Review to join me, and when I first asked him, he was not thrilled about the idea. Has his mind been changed on these films? Stick around to find out. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. And as I said in the intro, I am very happy to be joined here in this video by my buddy Mike from the Z Review. Once again, super happy to always have him here in a video. We're going to be hearing from him in just a little bit, but a big thanks to him for joining, and you guys can find the link to his channel down below in the description box. Go give him some love and let him know I sent you. But for now, let's go ahead and get into my thoughts on the Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. The first film in the series starring Johnny Depp, Orlando Bloom, Keira Knightley, Geoffrey, directed by Gore Verbinski, and having a beautiful score done by Hans Zimmer and many other people who were involved in the musical element of this franchise and this film in particular. And overall, what I could say about this film is I love this film. I'm a huge Disney fan, as you guys have seen on this channel plenty of times, but growing up, the Pirates of the Caribbean ride was one of my favorites. Today, not as much one of my favorites. I always kind of get a little bit uncomfortable in that water nowadays, but overall, I really do enjoy the ride. It's definitely iconic. It's one of the most iconic rides to ever kind of grace Disneyland and Disney World and the various parks that ride has been in and the various iterations that the ride has had in different parks. I really like the Tokyo one. I've never been to it, but I've seen videos of it and it looks really cool. Way cooler than the one we have here at Disney World and Disneyland, but the ones here are definitely classics. So overall, I have a lot of fond memories of riding the ride growing up as a kid, and leading up to this movie, I was hyped on it and I loved the film. It did something completely different than the ride ever could, because the ride's a pretty straightforward ride, and since then the ride has kind of had some retheming to add elements of the movie. So I love that they kind of inspired one another in different ways. But overall, I find this film to be incredibly entertaining, incredibly well acted, and has some awesome action, some great music. The score of this film is absolutely top notch, with some of the most iconic themes that you recognize throughout the entirety of this entire series. And overall, this is just a good, fun, over-the-top, swashbuckling time, and I never get bored watching it. As I mentioned, Gore Verbinski directed this film, and I think he does a great job directing this film. Overall, everything feels consistent. The story is told in a really consistent manner, and the story itself is cool and fun to watch. The basic premise is that there is this cursed gold that is keeping this group of pirates alive in an undead fashion, where once the moon hits them, they turn into these undead, skeletal, zombie-like creatures, and they can't die, and they're just out there just doing whatever they want. However, they no longer want to do this because they can't feel the pleasures of the human body anymore. They can't eat anything and enjoy it. They can't keep food down. They can't die. And they're just over being undead. Even though it has some advantages, undoubtedly it's more of a curse more than anything. Obviously, hence the title, The Curse of the Black Pearl. So yeah, they end up going out to try to seek out the last of this Aztec gold that's cursed in order for them to end the curse. And yeah, that's where Johnny Depp's Jack Sparrow, Orlando Bloom's Will Turner, and Keira Knightley's Elizabeth Swann all get mixed up into this whole adventure. And this is just a great over-the-top swashbuckling adventure with great choreography of battles, awesome costume design, great set design. The locations they film on are top-notch. And even though this film came out in the early 2000s and obviously CGI has come a long way, ultimately this film still looks really good. I really enjoyed the CGI. There's some iconic moments, like when we see all the undead pirates walking underground as they're switching between being human and being the undead look, because they're kind of walking in and out of shadows as the moonlight is hitting them and sometimes not hitting them. And that's one of my favorite elements of the entire movie, especially in the latter half, in the big third act, is there's plenty of times where these pirates are walking in and out of the moonlight, and so the CGI is consistently switching them from being these skeletal zombie looking creatures into humans. And I really enjoy the fun that they have with that concept. There's a lot of really cool ways that some of these creatures or some of these pirates are defeated simply by using this moonlight kind of trick. I really enjoy that whole element of the movie, and I think the visual effects of the film still really hold up. You have that great score, like I mentioned, you have great choreography, and ultimately this is just a fun movie to watch. I'm never bored while watching it, and when I go back and think of the whole series, this is easily probably my favorite, if not one of my favorites. Now that I've given my initial thoughts on the movie, let's go ahead and hear what Mike from the Z Review had to say about this.
Anthony, my man, what's going on? It's Mike once again from the Z Review on your channel, and thanks so much, man, for asking me to come back on yet another collab. And what I will say right at the get-go, you always intrigue me as to which film you've got in mind for me to join you on. And today, well, we're talking about a series, kind of, I think, for the first time, because Anthony hit me up not long ago and said, okay, well, do you fancy doing a series? And I was like, yeah, man, anything you need, I'm always down, and I love collabing onto the channel. I was kind of left intrigued as to what series he was actually going to choose, because for a while, he left me in suspense, and I was like, okay, well, hopefully it's a good one. Hopefully it's Back to the Future. No, it's not Back to the Future. Anthony chose Pirates of the Caribbean. And straight away, my face was like, yeah, I wasn't the best impressed by this choice, going to be honest with you, because my experience with the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, when I've actually gone back and checked out all this filmography, I've seen number 1, and I believe 4 and 5. So, yeah, it's a bit hit and miss, and it's probably why I've kind of got this attitude towards Pirates of the Caribbean. But I don't think it kind of helps. Back when I was 11, 12 years old, when this came out in 2003, I seen this with a couple of teenage friends from school, and we went to the cinema that's close to mine, which I still go to pretty much every couple of days. So it's just great that firstly that we've got that history, and I've got that kind of backstory to share about my actual local cinema. Yeah, at the time I just remember that this was a really long film. I think there was odd parts where I laughed at it, but overall, I think at the time when I was 11, 12 years old, I probably had a full belly of eating a full pick and mix and popcorn, being honest with you. So getting to see that at 11, 12 years old, compared to now when I'm 30, 18 years later, I've not seen this movie. So what are my thoughts on it? Well, they've changed dramatically. I actually really enjoyed this movie. For most part, this movie is solid. The acting, the casting, the script, the direction, the cinematography, CG, green screen. I could list so many things that I could actually give credit for. By far, one of the aspects that stood out to me the most was the score, because you've got to have a great musical score if you're not going to use a soundtrack. And of course, the theme song of this, where it goes do 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 do. You know what I mean, I can't really do it for copyright. But yeah, kind of that musical score everyone remembers and associates with Pirates of the Caribbean, along with Johnny Depp's performance as Jack Sparrow. Those are the two main things that you're going to associate with Pirates of the Caribbean. And 18 years later, people still remember those two things about this franchise. And ultimately, it's just really created a rich history for this Disney property. And overall, Gore Verbinski, who directs this movie, knocked it out of the park. But before this, he did a film called The Ring, which I'm sure most people's heard of by now, or at least seen. So he had that kind of like horror direction going into this movie. And there's definitely elements of this where you can clearly see that inspiration of that came into play into a pirate movie, which is awesome, because I believe this is like a PG or 12A rating, so quite a low rating here, at least in the UK. Even when I was watching this movie back, there were certainly elements of that horror, or at least suggested, especially when there's parts where like one of the crew are getting their throats slit. So I just wanted to add that I also really appreciate the choreography, especially with the fight sword sequence scenes. I really felt that they were well done. And I also love the transition pieces where we got when they turn from the light into the darkness, especially towards the end in this cave scene where we really see the pirates shine when they're in the light, and then suddenly as they go into the dark, they're back to kind of normal human form. And that kind of seamless transition really just seemed like a perfect transition, and for 2003 standards, it still really holds up till today. I thought the acting and the chemistry between all the leads was pretty solid. Everyone is good. I don't think there was a bad casting choice. So one piece of interesting trivia that I actually read up on was Johnny Depp was maybe not going to get casted as Captain Jack Sparrow, but instead Robert De Niro. Yeah, it just wouldn't have worked. And I'm glad they didn't. Maybe him as Barbossa. And I definitely felt like the charisma with Captain Jack Sparrow's character, it's just become so memorable, even, as I say, 18 years later. If you mention Captain Jack Sparrow, straight away, they're going to say Johnny Depp. So I really respect, firstly, that Disney created this big legacy. And still to this day, it's carried on for, I say, generations. And it probably is going to be one of those movies that do hold up generation after generation. Because for most part, the CG or green screen effects in this movie are still pretty good. Yeah, I guess you could probably say there might be one or two odd little bits outdated here and there. I wouldn't really say I've got many gripes with this. I was actually pleasantly surprised because I honestly thought I was going to go into this movie and absolutely hate it. But I can actually pleasantly say that I was pleasantly surprised. I'm glad Anthony's asked me to join on this collab and give my thoughts on the movie I'd not seen in 18 years, which is just nuts. So Anthony, man, thank you so much for your time and having me back onto the channel once again. Pleasantly a surprise watch for me. Overall, just solid movie. I really feel like now that I've actually seen this again, next time I'm not going to leave it 18 years, maybe 17. No, I'm only kidding. But I wouldn't leave it that long again to actually check this out. So man, thank you so much for having me back on your channel once again. I'm looking forward to talking about the rest of this series with you. And back over to your remaining thoughts, man, on Pirates of the Caribbean and the Curse of the Black Pearl.
A big thanks to Mike for being here in this video. Loved hearing your thoughts, man. And I'm so glad that even though you went in with a negative mindset on it and it wasn't really something you were thrilled to see, I'm glad that you actually quite enjoyed it. You had a different take on it. And I actually am really looking forward to doing the rest of this series with you. The next one is Dead Man's Chest. So you guys can see that review coming out very, very soon. If you guys want to stick around to see what Mike thought about the rest of the series, please hit that subscribe button and stick around. You know, there's definitely installments in this franchise that are not my favorite and elements of certain installments that are not my favorite, but we're going to get into all of those things specifically as we get into those individual films. But ultimately, I love this film. For what it is, a pirate film that adds fantasy elements, I don't really think you could have done it better. I think the performances are top notch, the casting, everything about the way that this film looks and feels, the production value. There was just so much talent on display, both in front of the camera and behind the camera, that goes into making this movie what it is. The editing, like Mike said, the choreography for the sword fights, the costume design, the set design. And I know I'm repeating certain elements here, but overall, the movie is so strong. It knows what it is. They go for it 100%, and it ends in a way that you know it leaves things open for a sequel that leaves you pretty hyped. And that's probably why this film was such a big success. That's probably why I remember going to see the second one on opening day, and it was just completely packed, wall to wall, fans everywhere. There was huge lines at the movie theaters, and I'll never forget that time, honestly. I loved going to see these movies in theaters, even some of the lesser ones later on in the franchise, but overall, specifically the first three, they were events, and I had a lot of fun watching them, specifically the second and third one, because there was just so much that ramped up from this first one that it's just so solid. And I just have to praise Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow. He's just phenomenal in this film. You know, sadly, later in the films, I would say more like in the fourth or fifth, it kind of starts to feel like he's kind of giving a cookie cutter performance, like he's just kind of cashing in on playing this character that he just knows how to play well. But in this first film, there's a charisma to it, there's an energy to it. And I would say in the first three films, there's this energy, there's this charisma to the way that he plays the character of Jack Sparrow that's just so unique. You kind of just can't take your eyes off of him. And I really thoroughly enjoy the casting of this film. The casting director, the casting department, they should be incredibly, incredibly proud of themselves, because just their three main leads with Johnny Depp and Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley, and even like the main villain who, you know, is a reoccurring character in the series with Geoffrey, yeah, you know, he's just absolutely phenomenal. Everybody in this franchise is so great. The line delivery is solid. Everybody knows what kind of movie they're in. The chemistry between all of them is top notch. And these are just big, fun, over-the-top fantasy pirates films. And if you ride the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, never would you ride that ride and think, oh yeah, this is going to become this huge, you know, fantasy franchise, which is essentially what ended up happening. When you ride that ride, it's pretty simple. And all the pirates are normal pirates. They could have easily just kind of gone a cookie cutter way of making a very basic pirate film. And I love that this franchise specifically really stands out for having been very different. You know, there are these big over-the-top fantasy elements that take from pirate movies and just basic pirate elements and just make it a big, good, fun time. This is the reason that I go to the movies. This is the reason that I watch movies, is for movies like this, where there's a big production and there's a lot going on, big blockbusters that are just fun to watch. And this is the perfect popcorn film. I'll never get tired of watching Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. And I'm going to stop rambling about it now because I want to hear what you guys have to say. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, comment your thoughts down below. Definitely want to hear what you guys have to say about this movie, about this video. If you enjoyed my buddy Mike, please go check him out. His channel is down below in the description box. It's called The Z Review. Go give him some love, let him know I sent you. And the most important thing, if you enjoyed this video at all, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It's free, and I would love for you to stick around and see more of my reviews down the line and see what Mike thought about the rest of the series. So very much looking forward to the rest of this series with Mike, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.